Warning! The following podcast may contain language and subject matter not suitable for all ages or everyone. If you don't like what you're listening to, please press stop. You're tuned into K-Pod. It's Life in Korea with your hosts, Scott, Adam, and Phil.
It's K-Pod, Life in Korea, the podcast that brings you some of the people living and working right here in South Korea. I'm one of the hosts, Scott. Sitting across from me, as always, is Phil. Phil, how's things?
It's great, Scott.
And sitting right beside him is Adam. Adam, how's things?
I'm doing well, thank you.
And this week, we've got a special guest on the show. We have the author of a new book coming out called Culture Shock Korea, a survival guide to customs and etiquette. So the author is John Bocskay. Is that correct?
That's right, Scott.
How's it going, John?
Good, man.
Good.
The boss.
I just want to say happy 4th of July to all the Americans out there living in Korea.
Woo!
And also happy Canada Day.
Yay, yay!
Last weekend, just a couple of days ago. So happy 4th of July.
Our home and native land.
What's that called? Independence Day?
Independence Day.
And happy Canada Day to everyone. So we have John here. John, where are you originally from?
I'm from the U.S. I grew up in Westchester County, New York.
So happy American Day to you.
Thank you, and happy Canada Day to you.
Thanks. So New York State?
Yeah, technically, I grew up, Westchester's just north of the city, so it's the suburbs of New York City, but New York State, yeah.
And when did you first come to Korea?
I actually remember the day. It was October the 7th, 1998, when I came. I think I remember it because my contract ended on the same day, and I was looking forward to it for a couple months. So I think that's why.
Waiting the days.
Yeah,
What area did you move to first?
I lived in Ulsan for a year, working at a hagwon. So yeah, I was counting the days toward the end of that. But
Maybe
yeah.
not the best experience there.
Oh no, it wasn't terrible. But I was just looking to do something else. 1 year was enough. And,
So 1998.
98, yeah.
So this is first time on the podcast we've had somebody who's been in Korea longer than myself.
Oh wow. Okay.
And, well, we're not going to get into
I'm not trying to pull.
Don't we have like streamers and like something to come down, like
What
celebration?
do I win?
Do you remember what originally brought you to Korea?
Yeah, I think it was a mixture of curiosity. I had kind of the travel bug after college. I traveled for about a year and went back to New York and was working and I just didn't feel like I wanted to be there. And then the other part of it was just trying teaching. I wanted to give that a try without committing to a master's degree. And then finding out that I hated teaching, so I just came and took a job, for a year, and I've been here, quote unquote, for a year ever since.
Also, you saw the Remo Williams movie, right?
That's an old one. Yeah.
That's what brought him to Korea.
Scott probably remembers. He's an older guy.
So
he's almost as old as me.
That's the reason I came to Korea.
What was Remo Williams? It rings a bell, but I can't
It
remember.
was some special secret service and American government that a Korean master taught people.
But they couldn't find a real Korean to do it, so they whitewashed him.
They were jumping around on the Statue of Liberty, and they could dodge bullets. And
Oh no, I know that it rings a bell, but I think I missed that one.
So after Ulsan, did you return to Ulsan or did you move to a different city?
I left Ulsan. I wanted to work in Busan. Like that year, I'd visited Busan a couple of times. I really liked it.
Yeah.
And so I was just looking for a job in Busan, and I was lucky because the timing worked out well. I finished up in October, and the university started hiring around that time, November. So I just kind of hung around for a while. I think it was like couch surfing for a month or two, and then went to this job fair and got a job. Pretty easy in those days because most people were leaving Korea after the Asian economic crisis.
Okay.
So like basically if you were here, you had a job. So I got a job in Busan, and then that was 2000. I moved there, and I've been living there ever since.
So you've been there for 17 years.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Busan's great. I love it. Yeah.
Busan, yeah, I'd say Busan is my favorite big city in Korea.
Me too. Yeah. Why do you say that? I'm curious.
Well, I mean, you got the beaches. It's not so densely populated as Seoul. You have like a good foreign community. You have good places to go.
Yeah.
But mostly the beaches, I'd say. To be honest. Like, Phil, you like Busan?
I'm not real crazy about Busan, and it's nothing against Busan. It's just I'm a small town guy, and so I live in Jinhae, and that's perfect for me. It's quiet. I don't,
Yeah.
I don't need a lot of lights and excitement.
Right.
Changwon's great for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean,
But it's better I think it's better to visit Busan than Seoul. I think I have much more
sure.
fun time in Busan than I would in Seoul.
Well, it's 40 minutes and 5 hours, so that also...
It is close, yeah.
I know. I like that about Busan too. You got the beach. That was one of the big draws for me. And for me, it was kind of a nice balance between. I like having the stuff you have in a city, like the variety and stuff. But I don't like the big crush of big cities. Like I lived in New York City in my early 20s for a year, and I didn't really like it. And I wouldn't want to live in Seoul for the same reason. But Busan's kind of a nice balance for me, where you get that city vibe, but it's not like overwhelming.
Yeah,
So
sure.
you've lived in Busan for 17 years. Has it changed a lot, or do you think it's been kind of
Oh my gosh,
gradual?
yeah. No, it's changed a lot. Yeah. We were talking earlier about, the food comes to mind right away. Like we were talking earlier, just like there was no real foreign food. And I mean, I like Korean food, but you want some variety. Now there just seems to be so much variety. Coffee, infrastructure's changed. Like when I came, they had just opened the second subway line. Now there's like 5, I think, and a new one under construction. There's a bridge, a suspension bridge. The Gwangan Bridge wasn't there.
Yeah.
When I moved there. So yeah, just the look of the city has changed a lot. The new buildings and all that. We've got the 6 of the 8 tallest buildings in Korea now. These skyscrapers, the iPark, and none of that was there. So just the look of it is different. The culture is different. The feeling's a little different too.
When did they start the fireworks festival?
Oh, it's a good question. It's been around for a while. I'd just be guessing though. I don't know. I'd just be guessing.
I went back
a few years. Though.
I went back in 2000. I want to say 2008 or 2009, and it was a spectacle. Like I thought it was the best fireworks show I've ever seen in my whole life.
It's pretty awesome. I live in Gwangali, actually, right up the street, and we can just about see it if I stand on the roof. We can see the top of the show.
Yeah,
and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, things change here quite, often and rapidly. I mean, I'm sure by the time you get back to Busan tomorrow, the city will be different.
Yeah, there'll be a new building up, and
where's my house?
The 9th tallest building in Korea will be there.
It's so true. No, that's one of the things about Korea that still amazes me. Like just last year, true story. I live in a house at the end of a small alley, and I left for work one day, and I came back, and the entire alley, about 30, 40 foot section of concrete, had been totally dug up. They had replaced a section of water main, and then the whole thing had been repaved, all between the time I left for work and came home, and I never saw
8-hour period.
Yeah, I never saw the workmen come or leave, but it had all been done, like it was all finished, and I was like, wow, that would never happen in New
You
York.
got like 12 guys like standing on shovels.
No, in New York you have potholes that have names. They're so old, So it's like
Reminds me of that guy was spray painting penises next to potholes to get the city to fix it in England.
Yeah.
They called him like Wanksy. Play on Banksy.
Oh, he's like Banksy, but Wanksy?
Yeah.
That's cool. I've never heard of that.
All right, so you've been here for this long. What's kept you in Korea? Why have you stayed for longer than myself?
I think over the years it's been different things. One was, when you live somewhere for a while. Well, I liked my job for one. I mean, if I hated it, I probably would have left a long time ago. So I like teaching. And then, you make a lot of friends. It becomes home. And then after a while, you just sort of realize, I can't put my finger on when exactly, but you just realize it's kind of easier to stay here than it is to leave and start over somewhere else. And it's not to say I feel trapped. I mean, I really enjoy what I do, but at some point I just kind of realized, I was like, okay, well, I guess, this is my life now. But,
So you're going to be here for the foreseeable future?
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is, I'm married. Oh. We have a house now that we own. We have kids, so we're really settled here. And it's just the thought of moving now. It would just be like just moving. It's not a question of going back to something. It would just be like starting over.
So you're married to a Korean?
Yeah, my wife's Korean. Yeah. So that now I guess it's a mixture of just genuinely liking it here and part of that that inertia, I guess, if you want to call it that. Just I don't want to move anymore.
Do you go home to visit your family often, or
not so much? Like because now we're 5 people. I have 3 stepdaughters, and we have a couple of dogs too. So moving everybody and getting someone to look for dogs is kind of a mission now. So
yeah, for sure.
So I've managed to persuade my mom like about 5-6 years ago. Why don't you just come here? My dad's gone now. He's passed away, so it's just my mom and
Did your mom make the trek though?
She's done it twice now.
Oh, there she goes.
Yeah, so like
that's a champion right there.
Yeah, so just come here and stay with us. So she's done that now a couple times.
I would have to be dying, I think, if my folks came out here.
They've never made the trip.
Yeah, no.
It's a rough trip. I mean, coming from North America.
Yeah, it's like 14-hour flight, and I think my dad is just like, no.
Yeah.
Like he can barely stand like a 6-hour flight.
Right.
If he goes down the Caribbean or something, but like.
Right.
Yeah.
No, my dad, he never made the trip. He passed away a few years ago, but he was like, nah, I'm not going to Korea.
I don't love you that much.
So, yeah, it was like, how long's the flight? No.
Quite like the flights, though. Soothing. Something about that just oddly soothing.
Yeah, well, you get used to it, right? You've done it a couple times, and it's like, all right, you read a book, take a nap, eat a crappy meal, and you're there.
Well, I heard about this new thing. You guys know the podcast is called Sleep With Me?
No.
It's this guy, and he just lulls you to sleep because he just talks about boring shit, but he has like a really, really like soothing voice.
Okay. They stole our idea.
Yeah, for sure. No.
Say that sounds like me.
No, and this guy, he said if you put on headphones and you wear like a hoodie and maybe like one of those eye masks, he said within 7-8 minutes you're fast asleep. And I've tried this before, and it actually did work for me.
Wow.
And like within, like he just talks about random things. Like he'll just tell you like random shit that happened to him, like on his way to the supermarket or something. But he has this like voice that's just like, it just kind of like calms everything.
Like velvet.
Yeah, and just puts you right to sleep. Yeah.
Wow.
So you're saying this is good for the airplane trip?
I would say it's, if you have trouble sleeping on planes, it will help you.
I always buy sleeping pills, actually.
Oh, yeah?
When, obviously from Canada, but when I take the flight. I don't know if they work, though. I don't recall sleeping
Those,
on a
I've
plane.
tried those once, and they made me barf, so I never did them again.
There's a brand in Canada that knocks you out within a half hour or so.
I do that with Benadryl. Like Benadryl, like it's an allergy medication, but takes me out, and I'm gone for 16 hours almost.
So we all took the flight over here, which was quite a trek, especially the first time. Actually, the first time flying here, you're usually quite excited, and the time goes by fast. It sucks after, obviously, being here for more than 17 years. Flying back and forth is not that fun.
Yeah, well, I think that was part of it, too. I just got tired of making the trip. And it occurred to me, too. I was like, I'm working as a teacher. I'm not making a ton of money. And, like, people would ask me in the States, like, why don't you come, when are you coming back or when are you coming home? And it started to sound weird. I was like, well, I'm home actually now. I live here, at a certain
This is
point.
your new home.
This is home.
Yeah, so it was like, well, why am I going over there spending all this money to see a bunch of people? Why don't you guys get on a plane? And because I don't really need to go.
Yeah, and it would be more interesting for them, right? Like it would be
it's like I don't need to be in New York in February, freeze my
Yeah,
ass off.
it'd be almost like a culture shock to them.
Oh, nice plug.
Sure.
So, speaking of which, you're the author of the new version of Culture Shock Korea.
Yes.
So, let's get into a little bit about this book.
Sure.
For starters,
Yeah.
what's the book about? Not in terms of what you've written, but I know it's been around. I have seen that book in
What's the Culture Shock?
2012, I think was the last one I saw.
Yeah, Culture Shock. Well, the Culture Shock is a series put out by a company in Singapore called Marshall Cavendish, and they have books for about 70 or 80 countries and a few major cities. And what they are more like guides for people who are going to be living in a country as opposed to traveling. So they go into a little more depth on things like culture, history, food, the things that you would need to know more, like living in a place, and like less to do with like what's to do for fun, the kind of things.
So they do other countries?
Oh yeah, there's
Yeah,
about 80 or so.
So like Culture Shock country.
Culture Shock India, Culture Shock Japan. Yeah, a friend of mine just wrote Culture Shock Vietnam. So there's probably about 80 of them or something. So yeah, as you said, the last time they put out a Korea edition was 2012, and they go back to their 90s. Actually, when I came to Korea, one of the first books I got my hands on was the then current edition of Culture Shock.
Yeah, I think it was 2002 possibly, and then 2012. Those are the two that I've seen.
Right.
Can you recall your biggest culture shock when you moved here? Like what stood out for you the most?
Wow, that's what stood out for me the most.
We can do that for each of us.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't really feel like I didn't have like a huge shock straight away.
Okay.
I think for me it was more like subtle things, like the idea of going to another country really excited me because I think I mentioned before I came, I spent a year kind of backpacking around Europe, and I just loved the experience of going somewhere new and diving in and that lost feeling. It was just exciting. So I didn't feel shock in that sense, like that I didn't know what was going on. It didn't bother me. But the things that, like, for me, the culture shock was more like when you would kind of learn something that, or not quite be able to understand why people were doing the things they were doing.
Yeah.
So like here's an example. That first year, like when I was talking to my boss, so I signed a fairly typical Hagwon contract, and you get like, say, 10 days off or something. But then when you go to talk to the boss and say, okay, well, here's my contract, here's what it says, can I have these days off? And you realize that he has a very different understanding of what the concept of a contract. Whereas in the United States, it's like that's kind of the last word. It's
set in stone.
What the contract says.
But here, it's a little bit more flexible.
Right, where a contract is more like a starting point, or just kind of it allows for flexibility. So that was, I remember, a shock at the time. I was like, well, what do you mean? My contract says I can do this. Why are you telling me I can't? And it took me a while to kind of understand. So that was one of the early things where I was like, what?
Yeah, that's a frustrating thing, too.
Oh, yeah, it still drives people crazy. It's changed a bit.
Along those same lines, I remember when I worked at a Hagwon, I work at public school now, but I started at Hagwon, and I remember when my boss would make a mistake, he would smile while he was apologizing to me, and I was like, what are you doing smiling at me? Like, I was like, are you mocking me? But apparently Koreans, like, they smile to kind of like try and like alleviate the situation, not make it as tense as it should be.
Right.
But I remember it made me so frustrated. I was like, why are you smiling at me right now when you totally made a big mistake,
That's one that still actually gets me, like the so-called embarrassed laugh.
Yeah.
Even knowing about it, like just last year I had a student who, he had done something to screw up in class, and I was kind of upset with him one day, like he left to have a cigarette or something. And I asked him, I was like, where'd you go for 20 minutes? He was like, I had a cigarette. And then he started laughing, like, ha, ha. And I was mad, and he's laughing. I'm like, why are you laughing?
This is not a time to laugh.
But he was embarrassed because I was calling him out in front of the whole class. I realized
you
later.
You guys ever experienced this? The embarrassed laugh?
Yeah.
It's, like once you know what it is, you can be like, all right, I can appreciate that. But if you're not familiar with it, like it really does make you more angry.
Yeah. If I hadn't known that, I wanted to choke the kid. I'm like, you can't just leave my class and then laugh in my face about it.
Oh, apparently you can.
Well, you can, yeah. But there was that instinctive, cultural reaction when I was like, why are you laughing? And then I was like, okay, he's just embarrassed. I'm embarrassed.
You were talking about contracts before. Back in those days, say when you first got here or when I first got here, the base language for the contract was actually Korean and not English.
Right.
So the contract could have been written... you don't know what it actually says.
Right. They would even
but
now.
That actually changed around 2007, where you can have your contract where the base language is English.
I have to read my contract. I still sign one every year, but there was I remember reading a clause somewhere. It was like in any sort of dispute, like the Korean version was like the definitive legal one. So for like if it hadn't been translated well, you couldn't say, well, this is what that means in English.
I think there are still some things that are worded very carefully. Where they'll say, like, you don't have to work on weekends or public holidays, but if the principal wants you to do whatever, then you have to do it. You're obliged to do it. And it's like, well, that means working on
But you can't have
holidays.
And you'll probably be hungover when you have to work on the weekends.
You can't have contract. You can't have your contract say the base. I don't know the technical terms for it, but like the base language. My contract says the base language for this contract is in English.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what the Korean says.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's cool.
So whatever it says in English, that's what it abides by.
Yeah.
And obviously the translation, if needed, is, probably more towards whatever the English says.
Yeah.
But I remember those days. They were fun. My first year, I didn't have a bank account. I got paid. Do you remember getting paid in the envelope?
Big stack of
fat
stack of cash.
Yeah.
It's at the end of the month, and you're just like, I'm balling.
Just throw them on the bed. What was that?
Like, damn it, I got a indecent proposal.
Yeah.
And you realize I'm the one who has to clean this up. I've made this huge mess for nothing.
But anyway, so culture shock. I don't recall myself having much culture shock. Like, I think people that are coming here or decide to come here are looking for that anyway. They want something new. For me, I've said it in past podcasts, one of the biggest things to adjust to was, it's odd, is looking up. I wasn't used to, like, places being on the second, third, fourth, fifth floor. And
Yeah, and a shit ton of signs everywhere, right?
Yeah, and the neon type thing, where I lived in Canada, everything was on the first floor, like business related. So I would walk around, and it took me months to look up and holy shit, there's a pool up there on the second floor, right near my house that I didn't know that was there. Put out. Did you guys have any culture shocks? Let's say Phil, you have any?
So I like to, sometimes people watch. You might call it being a creep. And it was really weird when I couldn't understand everyone's conversation. You just hear people saying stuff, like holding conversations. You have no idea what they're talking about. And that kind of threw me off because now I have this reverse culture shock when I go back home. And I can just understand everyone's shitty conversations. And it's just like, oh man, I'm missing out on all this pointless information.
Yeah.
What's happening? So that was kind of weird, because I'm sure everyone gets the reverse culture shock after being here for so many years.
That's what I have the most. When I go home, it's odd. I went home from my brother's wedding one time, which didn't last long. Not
The wedding or the
wedding.
marriage?
The marriage. I'm not knocking my brother or nothing, but
Take that.
it was odd because, I got to see all my relatives type thing in one place, and I'm constantly bowing to people.
Yeah.
Not like a full-fledged
Yeah, I've done that
bow.
too, man. I've done
But
that too when I'm home.
I nod to. It's
Yeah.
it's more of a nod than a bow. But
Yeah, last time I was-
people are like, "What are you doing?"
For sure. Last time I was in Canada, man, every time I was in a convenience store, I was like, oh, thank you. And I'd give them a bow, and they're like, what the fuck are you doing? Like,
Or the random kamsamnida, and you're like, I feel like an idiot. Like
yeah.
you're just pretentious trying to.
Oh, the worst is if you travel to Japan and you say kamsamnida, they're like, we're Japanese. It's
Japanese,
It's
motherfucker.
arigato gozaimasu.
For me, it would be like going to my cousin's house and like you just instinctively go to take your shoes off, And they'll be like, no, just come in. And I go in with my shoes on, but I just feel weird.
That's definitely an odd one. Like,
It feels strange
going
now to walk
back,
around
it's
with my shoes on.
walk in the house with your shoes on. It's like, I never do that.
Well, see, where I grew up, everyone took off their shoes. In West Virginia.
But it's not common everywhere.
Right.
In the West,
Shoes are filthy, man.
It was kind of situational. Like if we were out playing football or something, my mom would like, take off your shoes, but otherwise,
Didn't worry about it.
but I just feel weird.
Adam, what was your biggest culture shock here?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned like signs and everything. I remember, I don't know, culturally, I'd say like dating was a bit strange at first. Like
In Korea or just
in
general?
Korea.
In life.
Dating Korean women was a bit different than in the West.
It was probably more of a culture shock for them
Yeah.
than you.
Probably, yeah. I just remember, like, when I first arrived, like, I was working at companies like LG and stuff, and everyone would say, oh my God, you're so handsome. And I was like, I'm actually considered pretty average looking in my home country, like.
I'd say so. I mean, you excel at being
But they were
average.
like, you're so handsome, and like because of the high ridge nose and the blue eyes and shit, like it's like totally exotic for them. But
And you're quite tall.
But for me, it's just like I wasn't like a fetch, back in Canada.
Can I ask you, like everybody, you inevitably get compared to some famous person. Like years ago, I used to have sideburns, for example, and they'd be like, oh, they'd see the sideburns and go, oh, Mel Gibson, or
Somebody told me I look like Keanu Reeves once. I was like, I don't look anything like that guy,
What comparisons like have you gotten over the years? If I could ask,
Well,
I think it's kind of fun.
I used to have long hair, in the States. So one lady thought I looked like younger, chubbier Steven Seagal.
Steven Seagal.
I'm like, he's chubby enough. You didn't have to say that.
Scott, do you ever get a celebrity comparison?
I have two. One is was Mark McGuire.
I can see
I
that.
could actually kind of see that.
Oh, I was thinking Mark McGrath from.
My first year,
Sure, Ray.
my second year here, I actually went to a baseball game here, and everybody thought I was Mark McGuire. And people lined up where I was sitting, literally like the entire stadium. I didn't see the baseball game, and I was just signing autographs.
As Mark McGuire?
Yeah.
Like, you wrote down Mark McGuire.
You do look a bit like him, though. I can see that.
And
Steroids, man. Like, it's off the juice.
the other one was Bruce Willis, the bald Bruce Willis.
Yeah,
I don't have hair, but
Well, like I said, I got Keanu, and then like a little bit later, somebody said Edward Norton, and I was like, still, you're way off,
I got the other one I got was Elvis.
Elvis.
Maybe the sideburns again. I don't know where that came
Yeah.
from. Yeah.
Can you do an Elvis impersonation?
No, not at all.
Could you try? We'd really love it if you could just
What's it? Give me a line.
something like "You ain't nothing but a hound dog."
Nothing but a hound dog.
Oh,
How's that?
Peanut butter and fried bologna sandwich.
And the other guy I get, especially I get from back home, but also here is what are those two guys on Discovery Channel that do that? What's that show?
Mythbusters?
Yeah, Mythbusters.
Yeah, was it Jamie Heineman?
One of those guys.
Yeah. He always wears the
I
beret.
mean, yeah, if you had a longer goatee, I could see that too. And he wore glasses.
I do sometimes.
Yeah.
I obviously cut it once in a while. But
Once. I cut it once.
But you got to have the glasses for that one.
Going back to culture shock here, another thing for me when I first arrived in Korea, I arrived at night. I think or in this area, I arrived at night. I got to Masan around 10 p.m. and I got put in a love motel.
Ooh.
And there were all those like Pokemon cards with the girls on them.
Right.
All over the place. And right away I started collecting them.
Were you like, auga?
And it's always the lobby or the check-in place is always the third floor for whatever reason. It's not the first floor. So I got put in one of these love motels in a room that had one of those, like a sex chair, and there was like naked girls on the walls and stuff. And I was just like, thank God I came here. I thought it was in the, right away, right in the right place. But there's definitely neon. Neon was hard. I think with culture shock, it comes to wherever you come from. You know what I mean? It's going to be different for every individual.
In a way, I think the term culture shock is a little misleading because it like there are those moments sometimes where something's so different that it's like a shock. I remember walking like in the red light district in Amsterdam, and I remember this woman this overheard. She was like, "This is the worst culture shock I ever had." Like a woman from like Nebraska somewhere, like in a red light district. Like where it's something, it's just like a shock. Like, whoa, this is a lot.
Yeah.
But for me, it's more like I was saying, it's more like the things that are really different. You just kind of like, okay, well, it's different. And like if you go to some place that's just, where you got to ride like a rickshaw to get where you're going, you're just like, okay, well, that's just how it is. But when things are, I find the culture shock comes for me more the things that are more similar, the things that are just a little bit different. Like the contract thing I was saying. It's like, you sign a contract, you got to wear, everything's the same except, this little quirk, Yeah. And those are the things that kind of throw you off because I think when it's so similar on the surface, it kind of lulls you into thinking to expect things to happen a certain way.
Yeah.
And when they don't, that's what really kind of throws me for a loop where you're like, what's going on?
Along that same line, I would say we have respect for our elders in North America or in Western culture, but here it's like you have to even like talk to them differently. Like you have to add an oyo or imnida at the end of something like because they're older than you, even if it's just by a couple of years, Right. Yeah. Even if it's like a minute, like if you're a twin born 2 minutes later, you have to
You're screwed for life.
Yeah.
You like Korean food?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
What's your top favorite?
These days, probably I would say samgyetang is one of my all-time favorites.
Samgyetang.
I actually cook that at home now.
Oh yeah,
I love it. Yeah, I mean I eat everything, but that came to mind. I had it recently.
Where did you get the recipe for that?
It's pretty easy actually. It's just my recipe is really standard. It's just the chicken, the ginseng, chestnut, garlic, jujube,
and rice
stuffed in. And it's just really a question of how long you let it.
What's the broth made of?
Well, see, that's one of the
chicken
things
stock.
You can do it with just water and just let it go. But I use stock now, and it's
makes the difference.
It's the next level.
It's much better.
So you like to cook?
I don't like to cook. I like to eat. So I cook. Yeah, that's why I cook.
Yeah,
Excellent
samgyetang
answer.
is great, man.
Yeah,
I just got into sundae gukbap.
Mm-hmm. Do they do it? Because that's a big thing. That's a gyeongsang dish. Is that?
And I didn't like it when I first came here, but it took like a couple of years, and then I was like, I ate it one time after working out. I was like, I'll give it another shot, and then now I'm just like, I'm obsessed with it. I think it's awesome.
There's a place right down the street from my house. There's 2 places. Yeah, that's one of my regulars.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tough because I love everything, but those would be up on the list. But I love like takgalbi and takgalbi fried rice, all the barbecued meats, seafood. Busan, we eat a lot of seafood, sushi, and basically anything. There's really not much.
Yeah, do you go to Jagalchi often, the fish market?
No, actually, I live near the Milak Fish Market, which is at the end of Gwangali Beach. There's another kind of big fish market.
Oh, okay,
there.
yeah.
Same deal. You can
I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, it's a smaller one. It's you can walk in, pick out your fish, you can eat it there, take it home, do what you want.
Jagalchi is the biggest one in Korea, I reckon, right?
Probably, yeah. I read somewhere that it's the oldest, but I can't vouch for that. Someone said it's about 500 years old in continuous operation, and it kind of looks it. It got a facelift a few years ago.
Yeah.
But it's got its own real culture. It's got its own dialect. There's words that they use there that they don't use anywhere.
Yeah. It's kind of like, cool. And they have like big auctions, like in Tokyo, the Tsukiji market, the really big one.
Yeah, where they sell tuna for like $1 million.
Yeah.
All right, so getting back to your book here, how did you get involved in terms of becoming the author of the 2017 version of Culture Shock Korea?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. It's actually a story, where to start. Well, I'd been blogging and writing for local magazines like Busan Haps and mainly that one. And then, mainly for free. And, it's that old thing about writing for exposure. Everybody's like, oh, you work for exposure. And writers and artists, musicians, everybody jokes about it.
I definitely know that.
Yeah, but it really helped me in the end, because what happened was I'd been doing that for a few years, and I guess when the editor was looking for somebody to write it, she was just contacting bloggers, people who were writing about Korean culture. So I got an email through a blog that I actually had been defunct for about a year, that had been writing for, and asking me, would you be interested in doing it? So I was like, yeah. So I mean, it was kind of the editor of Busan Haps, he likes to use this story now as justification, for not paying anyone, but he's a nice guy. He's like, see, exposure really is worth something. It really does have value. So really that's how it came about. Yeah, I just got an email one day.
So you're the author of the entire book?
Yeah, we started from scratch. The old one, I mean, as you know, like Korea changes so much, and obviously things like history and food and the basic roots of the culture don't really
historical
change.
Facts.
Yeah, but we basically just started from scratch. I just started completely over. I just referred to the old book just to see what kind of things they included, but as far as the
you wanted
content,
to keep it separate.
Yeah, well, I just started over. Well, I asked the editor initially. I was like, "So am I revising the old one? What am I doing?" She's like, "No, you're just writing a new one." So I just started over. Yeah, new images. The series itself got like a facelift. They changed some design features. They have a lot of illustrations now, and I think more pictures than before. Frankly, I think the images in this one are better. You've probably seen some of the old ones, and they look like some guy's snapshots, from pulled out of a shoebox somewhere. Like, all right, this will work.
Maybe a little bit of clip art.
They don't look very good. Yeah. But this one I tried to get good photos, and I'm lucky that I know quite a lot of good amateur photographers, people I could call up and say, hey, can you give me some good shots? And there were a lot of people were willing to pitch in. So visually, it's a nice book.
Where did you get this picture?
This is from a guy named Shuvra Mandal, Mondal. He shot.
Shout out
Shuvra Mandal. Yeah, and it's a lovely shot. He was very generous. I didn't have much of a budget. They did give me a budget, but it was like, I don't know if I'm allowed to say the number, but it worked out to about $10 a photo I could spend. Okay. Which is not a lot. It's not really what they're worth, But a lot of people were cool.
But again, exposure.
Yeah, hey, don't knock it, man. It's really, you never know.
Someone will be like, oh, this is a nice photo. I'd like to have that in my living room.
You never know. You never know where it goes, People say, hey, who shot that? And I wonder if he's got anything else. Or you never know where it leads, yeah.
So many people actually contributed, photos?
7 or 8, yeah. Some of them were friends of mine. And then I put out a call. Facebook was really useful for finding people. There were a lot of photography groups. So I would say, hi, I'm writing this book and I need shots. And anybody interested, please send me a link to your portfolio. And I got a lot of good stuff like that. Yeah.
So what are the main themes of the book? Like if you could give us a general understanding, is it like food and etiquette and things like that, or? Right.
So the series, it has a format. So they pretty much give me an outline. They say we want a chapter on history, we want a chapter on customs and etiquette, one that's more about socializing, social customs.
Okay.
One on food, language, one specifically about work culture.
Yeah.
And then one about enjoying yourself in the country, traveling and enjoying yourself, things to do. And then the first chapter was sort of wide open. It was called First Impressions with no real instructions. They're just kind of
whatever you think.
Go. Yeah. but it had that basic framework, and all the books have that same general framework.
All right. Yeah. So it's essentially just a guidebook then, right?
It's a guidebook, yeah. They usually, when they classify it, like I looked it up, they sometimes lump it in with, travel guides, but it's not really a travel guide. You could use it as one, but it's more, like I said, more for living there or if you're going to
long-term residence.
If you're working and living here.
Right. You really have to get settled in. And
That's good.
There's a chapter on practical stuff, like how to get a phone, how to rent an apartment. So it's really
I think
that.
the work etiquette is probably very essential for that.
Right, and that's a whole
social one as well.
That's a whole chapter as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's more geared for people who are going to be staying a while.
Cool.
So that's Culture Shock, a survival guide to customs and etiquette, which will be released at some point soon. And I'll have the links to, where people can get the book and stuff like that in the show notes whenever it comes out. It's
out actually. Well, the ebook should be out. My editor told me June, so I'll double check that. But the ebook, by the time this broadcast airs, the ebook will be out, and then
we're not airing this. This is fake. We're just here to talk to people.
The hard copies will be available in August, I'm told. That's on Amazon, UK, Book Depository, and all the big booksellers will have it in August.
Yeah, I'll have all the links to wherever anybody interested wants to get the book, they can pick it up, and even if it's at a later date.
Great, thank you, yeah.
It'll always be updated type thing. Right. So that's Culture Shock once again. Mm-hmm. One thing I want to remind people is culture is different everywhere. So, people thinking about coming here or new here, just keep in mind your way is not the highway.
For sure.
It's different everywhere.
Yeah, it's better to adapt than just complain all the time. Yeah.
You can learn about it or just accept it type thing.
Yeah.
But don't necessarily go against it.
Well, that's actually, it's one of the points I try to make is like, when you go anywhere, any country is going to be different. And a lot of how well you adapt really has to do with your own attitude and your own, how you look at it.
Yeah, 100% I agree.
So I really try to make that point. I really spend a lot of time talking about that, just really be open, but also, understand. You don't have to necessarily like everything that's new and different, but you have to understand.
Yeah, you don't have to agree with everything, but I mean, you don't have to complain all the time.
Right.
'Cause you find a lot of people, I think, here who just bitch and moan about things that don't really matter.
Right.
I'm sure you guys have heard the expression, the ugly American. Mm-hmm. Anytime I travel or I go anywhere, I try to be the opposite of what that would be.
For sure.
That's not an expression, that's a fact.
Is it?
Yeah, have you heard about
North American?
Have you heard about the beautiful Canadian?
Yeah. I've heard about some beautiful beavers.
But it's same everywhere, you know what I mean? Yeah. If I go to America, it's not much different culture differences between Canada
and gravy America. And cheese curds on your fries. I don't know.
Right. Canada is known as, USA's retarded little brother.
No, we always say America Light, like the light beer.
I didn't know it was retarded.
No one said that. Said nobody. I wish I had this book when I moved here initially. I didn't think I'd be here.
Things are so much different, compared to like when, say, both of us got here.
Back in our day,
I mean, things like social media didn't exist. There was no Facebook. There was
you had to
no
actually
clubs,
talk to people.
There was no nothing.
Friends.
I just got my first email account when I moved here. I didn't even have email.
What was it? Was it like Hotmail or like?
I opened a Yahoo account when I moved to Korea.
Yeah, I still have Hotmail.
Yeah, you do.
You've got mail.
You've got mail.
So things are a lot different, obviously, than now. There's all kinds of groups and social media and Facebook things. You can find out more. If you're interested in coming to Korea, it's a lot easier. Like Skype, you can keep in contact with people from back home.
Yeah.
Things are easier in terms of life in Korea.
Yeah, and I think Korea also has opened a lot to the world in that time, and it's become more livable, if you want to put it that way, for Westerners. Like if you are kind of attached to your home culture, like you can find that stuff. There's more of that variety.
I think it's a lot more welcoming towards foreigners, especially among the younger generations.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Not to say that all the older ones don't want us here, but there are some, obviously. But I think the younger generations, they're a lot more open to like meeting us and talking to us and things like that. So.
I would agree. Yeah, I see that openness too, especially in the younger. But like I said too, a lot of the older people too, they were very open,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
very
Yeah.
welcoming.
Yeah.
But when you do run into that conservative, like Yankee go home mindset, it does tend to be like some 85-year-old
Yeah,
guy,
for sure. Yeah,
lives out,
and you just got to
he lives in a
ignore those
bunker or
people. It's just
something.
like whatever.
It's generally not a 21-year-old kid at a
Yeah.
university campus.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
So that's Culture Shock, a survival guide to customs and etiquette, a new book, Culture Shock Korea, right? Correct?
Right. That's right.
So a new book coming out soon. We'll have all the links to everything in the show notes and how you can get this book if you're interested in it. The author is John Bocskay. correct?
Bocskay.
Yeah.
Bocskay?
Bocskay, yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm not saying it
bound to
right.
happen.
I'm not saying it right either.
You're not saying it right anyway.
It would make a great gift for someone interested in moving to Korea,
Yeah, if you know anybody who's kind of new in town or who's always complaining, hasn't figured it out, maybe stuff it in their
Maybe a
stocking,
college graduation gift.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Get out of here, kid.
Yeah.
Get a job.
Get a job. Move out of your parents' basement.
So if people want to get in touch or find out more about the book, they can email podcast@changwater.com. If people want to get in touch with me, they can email me at scott@changwater.com. If people want to get in touch with Phil,
I don't think people want to get in touch with me. I mean, I'm waiting on Facebook and all social medias, but yeah, I'm on Facebook and Instagram if you're lonely.
and Adam,
Don't be so insecure.
I am insecure.
I'm
wrapped with
Adam
guilt.
I'm Adam at changwater.com, and I welcome everything. I welcome dick pics.
and
You heard that.
John, yeah, you can
if
add
people
me.
want to get in touch with you.
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook. John Bocskay is Bocskay, and just feel free to add me or follow.
The boss.
The boss. You started that, but I'll take it.
Hey, man. The boss in the morning.
I've been called worse than that, so that's cool.
All right, so that's Culture Shock Korea, a survival guide to customs and etiquette. It's a new book that comes out. It might be out now. If not, it'll be out soon, and we'll have all the links how you can get the book.
Add it to your Amazon wish list.
All right, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the K-Pod, and we'd like to remind you to please share and subscribe, and leave any comments you want, even if they're negative comments, because if you want to leave a negative comment, we relish in that shit because you're an asshole. And I hope you have a good weekend, and happy Canada Day to all my fellow Canadians out there. I love you all.
Happy
And,
Independence Day.
Stay tuned. Goodbye.
Thanks for tuning in to K-Pod. Stay tuned for our next episode.